All right, Coriama. Thank you so much for being here. You look fabulous as
Thank
always.
you. You too.
Thank you. So, pleasure definitely aligns with who you are and the work you do. So, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. As you know, I'm in Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April. So, we wanted to have this conversation with experts, people who this is, their world, just pleasure. So, I want to start out by asking you, though. I see when I was reading your bio that you have transitioned from Chicago to Atlanta.
I
So
have.
let us know, like, how is the pleasure community in Atlanta like compared to Chicago?
I feel like Atlanta is way more open. It's not as conservative as Chicago. And it's weird because like I'm in Georgia and I like have to remind myself of that. Like I'm in Georgia, but like it's a lot of Black folks here. Like I feel like Atlanta is just like a Black city, which is great. In Chicago, it still has this like white aura and energy over it. Like even in like some, like Black pockets and or just like how you navigate the city, it's very much so like still very like a white city, I feel like.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
shout out to the South Side. I love the South Side of Chicago, and that's kind of been like overly a safe haven for me. But like being in Atlanta, I definitely see folks are more open to sexuality. There's more like people are interested in like having these conversations more. Folks are like, there's certain areas people like to be in. And just like the greatness of like there's so many types of Black folks that are like, really, I mean, trying to inform themselves more about, pleasure and sexuality, but also like invested in like the learning aspect, invested in like buying Black and like invested in like Black sex education, in a way that like, I think Chicago has smaller pockets of that, but Atlanta is just more potent with it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you are where you need to be. So
Mm-hmm.
congratulations on that move, Koriyama.
Thank
All right. Well, let
you.
me tell our audience who you are. So Koriyama, BKA Goddess Coco Meow, is the BDSM community pleasure activist, pro-dominatrix, and fetish esthetician that weaves intersectional mindfulness in their practice as a sexual healer. They're the founder of Sex Kiki, a sanctuary where Black femmes and femme can embody and explore eroticism. A resident of Dom at Atlanta Dungeon and lead instructor at the Atlanta Sissy Academy. Koriyama is a body-affirming practitioner whose temperaments range from sensual to sadistic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, I mean, like people are like, oh, I don't know. Some people are weird about, you know, folks knowing their name or like their vanilla
Uh-huh.
name. But I'm like, I use both like, when I'm like in community, especially with Black queer folks, like, Koriyama, my like persona or like dungeon persona is
Mhm.
Goddess Coco Meow. And so, I like, I don't expose it to like online as much as I have before, but like I definitely use, I don't mind people like knowing I'm Coriama, especially community.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. So,
Mhm.
Koriyama, how would you define pleasure activism? Like within the context of just all the work you do, like how would you
Mm.
define that?
I feel like, I think it's an ongoing and progressive type of understanding. So I don't have a set definition, but I do think it's like a gradual process of identifying for oneself, like how pleasure is in life, how it exists in the everyday life. And then more so as you get to learn how you can advocate for that pleasure in your intersectional mindfulness for yourself, but also how that like translates to interpersonal relationships.
All right, nice. So speaking of pleasure, where do you feel like you get your sense of pleasure? Like thinking about these days, how are you getting pleasure?
From routine and ritual.
Okay.
I get it from things as simple as an instant or, doing binge shopping online, which I've been doing lately, or or just, meditation. I chant. You might hear some noise, so I like live by a train. But
It's
and
fine.
also I also like for me, like I've been finding it in just like stillness because as a person who likes to
Mhm.
be active and on the go, it's also Aries season. So,
Great season.
My birthday is next month, so I'm hella geek. But,
Early
I'm just
happy
like,
birthday.
thank you. Like, I'm just finding a lot of, pleasure and stillness. And like, there was a period of time when I wasn't even like motivated about like creatively, I wasn't motivated. That's like unusual and stuff like that. And, I just had to like take this moment of like just being. And so, yeah, stillness has been like a mode of just pleasure and also just like really honoring just like basic things like shelter, water, and all these things because I was a caretaker for a majority of this like half of the end half of 2020, and I'm just like being at the mercy of other people's space, like having my own space again, and like doing all those things. It's just like the very things that we take for granted, like is so pleasurable because we have access to them, or if you do have access to them. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that.
Yeah, so being very intentional about, how you're using pleasure. When people meet you though, and they find out like what you do they often ask you like how you, seek pleasure or joy or things like that? Are they interested in knowing that from you?
Uh, Not like family, friends, like, are people that know me more like in my everyday life. If they, they don't know explicitly that I do this, but then they get to know it,
Yeah.
then they ask more of those questions. Like, 'cause I'm definitely, you know, before I was like, whatever, like I'll tell people. Now I'm just like intentional about how I communicate that to folks.
Yeah.
But like if it's like somebody online or like a sub or like somebody inquiring about things, like they it's really about they center their desires more often than you would think, or they like do things that are really weird. Like people have an interesting connection with pleasure in a way. I like it's a lot of unlearning that needs to happen. And I also
Yeah.
interact with like from the dominatrix dungeon perspective, I interact with like a lot of white men. And so I would have them to come for their ass because they be just like and I will not see someone if they don't abide by my rules or like
Of course.
intentional or like
Yeah.
so it's a mixed bag. It's like people who know me on a day-to-day life and get to newly know the sex
Mhm.
positive side of my work as a sex positive cultural worker. And then there's like people who are like seeking my services who don't know me and don't know how I want to be engaged, even in,
Mhm.
as a sexual healer. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah. Coriama, you mentioned that you had to unlearn a lot of things. And this next question is just about, who taught you to feel good? Because a lot of times we aren't taught, how to
Mhm.
feel good. A lot of things, growing up that we do as children, we're taught that, they're bad, especially when it
Mhm.
comes to, our sexuality or body parts or things like that. So who taught you how to feel good or even gave you permission that, hey, this is okay. You deserve to feel good?
Well, I've always been the type to just do what the fuck I wanted to do. So I didn't need nobody permission. Like that's kind of a
Yeah.
natural part of who I am. Like even growing up with my mom, like, as a non-binary femme and like really understanding like which ways like gender socialization has harmed me. Like my mom used to tell me like, oh, you're not a boy, or why are you always fighting, or why are you always so this, like
Yeah.
things like you're like so domineering, or like with things like that. And I had to realize that like in my queerness and my experience of that growing up and like my mom not really knowing what to do with that, or in
Mhm.
hindsight her acting like she did know what to do. um it was really me just doing, I don't know, it's like something in me, it's like a fire or a spirit
Yeah,
in me that was just
yeah,
like I had deserved this. And it took a point in time, in my youth and growing up, for me to like realize that I've actually always been going against the grain. I've been always like this kind of like weirdo that like, to some degree, or like, doing things that like were out of the ordinary for those
mhm,
around me who were nurturing me. But also I grew up in a space where my mom was unconventional in her relationships. She's
okay,
never been married. She has 6 kids. They're from 4 different men.
mhm,
So like I'd never seen, you know, I just felt like there was a lot of options, even though like, she was stressed in a lot of ways, but I still
yeah,
saw that as like a possibility for like, there's options, like, you don't have to do things in a specific way. So that propelled me to be like, have enough nerve to explore
mhm,
things on my own for myself. And then, of course, like I love Eartha Kitt, as far as like, just like the whole Catwoman energy
Yeah.
and just like the feline energy is also like supports me in my like cat persona in my work. And also like people that I'm in community with, folks that I'm learning from that, you know, have more experience, like Mistress Ashley Page is like an example. Mistress Marley is an example of like folks that are like in my age range, but have like, you know, a little more experience than me.
Yeah.
One person has like, is a newer dom, and then another person has a little more experience, or just like watching what folks, you know, a lot of these older doms, especially within like the non-POC doms, like they like to gatekeep and try to like, you know, be exclusive. And it really showed me like what I bring to the table, like what my intentions are with the work that I do. And so it's part me being young and like, you know, seeing a non-conventional, you know, relationship style with my mom.
Yeah.
It was part me like being a queer person and like deciding to do what the fuck I was going to do for myself, because like folks didn't really know how to support that. And then it was part of me just like having the determination to fight within me, because I'm naturally a fighter. So it's just like having that natural inkling to like explore things on my own, and then visibly seeing folks in my community or folks around me, or like, you know, that are doing similar work for me.
Okay. What does feeling good mean to the people you work with? Like, what do they get from feeling good?
So do you mean like my clients, or do you mean like community? Because sometimes that can be two totally different energies.
Let's go with clients.
Okay. So my
Yeah.
clients are, so I'm newly have been, you know, appointed to be the head lead instructor for the Atlanta Sissy Academy. What that means is like a lot of men who are into cross-dressing or doing gender play or exploring their feminine side, or however they, you know, see that for themselves, and like me facilitating them through that process. And, you know, since I have a temperament from sensual to sadistic, so like I can get, you know, be inflicting pain and things like that. But like I mostly start from an embodied space, like a mindful, spiritually anchored space. And so a lot of that is dealing with like these men who can't fully explore themselves in their everyday vanilla life. So their work life. And so they come in and just really wanting to like play dress up and like learn how to put on makeup and like learn how to like talk how they want to talk, or practice their voice, and like walking in the mirror and like just having someone really to play dress up with them and facilitate them in a process. And so that's, you know, a part of the work. A part of the work is also too dealing with people's like, you know, things that they are hiding. So like their spirit, their energy body is communicating one thing. They have like, you know, they're trying to escape. So people come to the dungeon to escape. Some of them come because they want like to explore something that they like haven't been able to for a long time, or they did when they were a younger kid. So like a lot of these men are like, yeah, I was a little boy and I used to wear like my sister's clothes or do things like that. And then like, you know, but people aren't accepting of that, or even their lover, wife, or whoever, like, you know, doesn't understand that need of that to express that part of a personality. And so you're dealing with a lot of complex, you know, a lot of complex things. And sometimes, sometimes it's just like, it's all, you know, it's all a matter of, you know, me being able to shapeshift too. And like having that experience of like, you know, being a healer, like, you know, reading my own personal journey, my own personal travels, my own personal willingness to like be receptive to what people need, and being able to like be discerning and how to facilitate that. And so you really got to be a chameleon. So I feel like I'm like a sex positive chameleon, and like, you know, changing different colors and shifting. But at the heart of it, it's spiritually anchored, and it's very much so like has to be in mindfulness, because there's a lot of trauma. And like also like I also understand power dynamics, and I also understand like what it means for me to even hold space for a white person, let alone a white man. So it can be very complex. And like I've had, you know, POC folks in the dungeon, you know, different, I think like the folks that come in the dungeon for me are very like multicultural, but it is more white men than anything. But like particularly the Black men that I've had are like wanting someone who is, you know, a Black and can support them in cock and ball torture, or they can be feminized, or they can wear panties around, and, you know, stuff like that. So
that's amazing, Coriama. So the great Tony K. Bambara said that we must make the revolution irresistible and to say yes to ourselves, to our whole selves. What is the embodied yes at the center of your work?
Spirituality and like not separating the spirit from the sexual experience, or like the erotic being a source of power. Like Audre Lorde's uses of the erotic as power is what really influenced me to like be even invested in my own pleasure, to be invested in like pleasure as a form of healing in community and on like a, you know, a client dom relationship. And so for me, spirit is at the heart of everything I do. You know, at first I was like, I don't want to do this work. Why do I have to be the sexual healer? Like, I don't, you know, and like, because there's so much, you deal with so many different complexities, like things like incest, trigger warning, because I don't know if even hearing that triggers folks that watch this, but like you deal with things like incest and different types of play, or just things that like people, it's like you deal with the like root and sacral a lot, and sometimes that's very dark and like, and I'm gonna say demonic. Take it for what it is, because like dark can be associated with bad things when I don't think dark is always bad. But it's just very much so like spirit has to be at the heart of everything for me, because it's just like the calling of my life, and taking that responsibility and not being a coward and like running away, because it's also where my trauma is. Like I'm just turning poison into medicine. Like that's a Buddhist principle, but like I've just decided to take the poison. And like, you know, as a healer, I was able to heal myself. I'm still in a gradual process and continual process of healing myself, but having these tools and that spirit as an anchor to be able to support other people in that process. Because a lot of people are suffering, and it stems from like a lot of root and sacral stuff that deals heavily with identity, sexuality, and you know, just the way that we see ourselves with our skin.
Yeah. Great. So how do you create boundaries doing this work? Like, what does your boundaries look like just in the community and even with your clients, being that a lot of your work, you use your, you know, sense of self, your body, all of those things. So what does boundaries look like?
Boundaries look like a lot of like having explicit no's and hard limits. And negotiation is like really big with that, especially like when you're newly seeing someone, post care, having like conversations like during a screening. So yeah, for me, my boundaries are really connected to my hard limits, and like some of those things are flexible. Like say for instance, like race play. I had a client yesterday, like I'm not really into race play at all, and he's like wanting it to be a kink for me, and it's like he's like, yo, you know, I want you to say like white men are shit and like we need to serve a superior race, and it's like I will tell you that because it's true, but it's not a kink for me. Like like you abuse power. Like I don't think, you know, I think you should be serving us and whatever, what have you. And he like, I'm like, it doesn't have to be a kink for me to tell you the truth. And he was like, that like was great for him. He was like, oh wow. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not into that. Like you know, that's not where my joy comes or my pleasure comes, like with doing this work, because it has to be enjoyable for me too. But like if you want to pay me to tell you the truth, then like okay. And so like also letting people know, like just because you like something doesn't mean your dom or someone else is going to be like super into it. We have our own preferences and things like that, and also us professionally sometimes is very different than our needs and our pleasures outside of that. And so my boundaries are like, I understand what I would be flexible with in the ways in which I will be flexible with it. And I understand what my hard no's are. Like toilet training, for instance, like I'm not you know, I don't think it's anything bad. Like folks want to be toilet trained and like all this other stuff, but like I'm not into scat play. You know, that's not something I want to do. And like, not because I don't think it's like something that could be meaningful for that person or like an enjoyable experience for me, because it's like, what the fuck, like some things are just like you like take you in a space of like of pushing you forward and seeing something that you thought you wouldn't like that you may be interested in. But there has to be a level of intentionality with me, with anyone. If you can't do basic things like, you know, we have a conversation, I feel out your energy, okay, that's cool. If we have an email and I'm sending you what you need to do to confirm, if you send a deposit at such and such a time, confirm with me on this day. Like there's certain things that I need to see, that if you're going to be an actual conscious and intentional sub, I don't want just anyone. Of course I want subs to pick me. That's how I make my money, but I decide who comes into my you know, kingdom. And that's the thing that I'm at. I'm like, I have agency over who I decide to see. I don't have to see them if I don't want to, and like reminding myself that like I can say no at any point in time. My no is powerful, and my embodied wisdom is important. So if I get an inkling in my spiritual body or anything that I'm like no to this person, then I don't second guess. I'm like, okay, this is a no. And so it's just like having things written down, like even on my site, like having things written out. And if people don't understand it, like go to my site. And if you can't get with that, then there's nothing, we can't talk further. And there's somebody else that might be a better fit for you.
Yeah, and your no is powerful. I love that. So Coriama, who awakens your senses? Who are your teachers? Like, who are you learning from?
Adrienne Marie Brown, which pleasure activism is, I haven't read it in a while, but in my book it looks so beat up because I've just been like, it's been used a lot. Zoe Ligon, a good friend of mine too, has been like supporting me as a like sex positive entrepreneur. Like she has a really vibrant sex toy company that's based in Detroit, and like we've done public speaking together, but we're also like actually like mindful friends. So like we make time for each other and things like that. And like they've soared so much, and I've just learned a lot from them for like, organizing and like having a business as I'm stepping into like, doing things in a different way for Sex Kiki as we're on a brief pause. And also just like Patricia Hill Collins. I like Black Sexual Politics. I think it's a little binary, but I like the book. Another book that I've been reading is it's by Sobofuno. I can't pronounce her name. It's an African teacher who passed away, but it's intimacy, spirit of intimacy, and that's like by ways of African teachings. And so I'm like butchering the title, but it's spirit of intimacy. There's like another part to it that I can't think of. I read it like 4 months ago, but essentially I like that. It's a good introduction for folks to see like why gender is such a colonial imposition. And like how, language really heavily connects to our understanding of gender. Like African languages like have a lot of gender neutral terms for like people. And so like a lot of the things that we understand are really heavily connected to language. So that is a good introductory to like understanding these concepts. Of course, Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde, like that is like the root of like what the work that I do. And just like reading blog posts and like seeing things that other folks are putting out and like learning from, Patreons and just like other work that is just generally out there living on the internet and like seeking that has been a good teacher as well.
Okay. Thanks for sharing those resources, especially for our audience who are listening to this, putting those out there. So thank you. So Coriama, how do you work to reclaim your whole, happy, and satisfied self against oppression?
This is one thing that I've been doing a lot lately, especially I was talking to someone about this more recently, but it's like I decided not to perform for my sadness. Like I'm not going to perform that I'm happy. I'm not going to perform that, something in me is, unpleasant. Like I'm like really allowing all of my emotions to live and breathe deeply as they need to. So that way I can be, so I can honor my truth and not try to perform, like sadness is hard for people. Anger is hard for people. It's a natural part of, who we are, as humans. We have a lot of different emotions. They stem from a lot of different things. So for me, it's like, I'm just not performing for my sadness anymore. I'm over that. I'm over like, I'm always a person that brings a lot of energy and vitality to spaces or things. Like I'm not, I'm not worried about like, oh my gosh, am I like on? Like I'm not performing for sad ass me. Like she just gonna have to live. She gonna have to live and breathe and be all right. And I'm just like rolling with that. And oppression is very weird and complex and like insidious. So sometimes like the sadness isn't even my own. Sometimes I'm getting downloads from, spirit like that, these are communications I'm getting for the collective. And so I'm learning to kind of just like let it be. And also like, don't hold on to shit that ain't for me. Like oppression sometimes has you holding on to things that like isn't your battle. Like I ain't create racism. I got to deal with this shit. I ain't created. So I'm not about to be like acting like, I'm just this, neglected ass Black femme. No, I have I'm righteous, I'm whole, I'm joyful, I'm all these things. That's not my burden. I have to deal with it. So to some degree it is, but like, it's not for me to hold. It's just for me to work through and push through and deal with my realities. So that way I can do my work. Cause it's a fucking distraction. Like Toni Morrison said, it's a distraction. So
it's a distraction. I love that, Coriama. Yes, distraction. So my last question, I just want to know, we've hit the 1 year mark being in this pandemic. Like, how have you been taking care of yourself these days? Like, what do you do? What do you put in place?
Lately I've been waking up and being grateful, like
Being
grateful to
grateful.
wake up.
Yeah.
I do a ritual every day where I clean my space every morning. And I like open up all the windows and the back door because it has a lot of light. And I just like let a lot of light in. And then I do a grooming ritual practice. And like that can consist of showering and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm like an every other day shower. Some people every day. I don't like that. For the acid mantle on your skin, you can break down the barrier and like your skin can't like really fight off any like external pollutions and things like that. So I try to like be every other day. I like have been getting more into like my own beauty regimen because I realized those are things that I like to do. I love to adorn my own body. Like I'm an esthetician for a reason. Like I do this for other people, but like it's also like a spiritual practice for me.
Yeah, for
And
yourself.
like so like being more like realizing when I let that go, it's because I'm usually like not acknowledging something that's going on internally. And trying to drink more water, like really restoring my relationship with water. And like, yeah, just trying to like really be intentional about like the things that bring me joy. In a pandemic, like my mom just recovered from a stroke and my whole family got COVID and she survived. So she survived two brain surgeries, 2 strokes and COVID. And I'm just like,
wow, that's a blessing. Goodness.
Yeah. So I'm like just being grateful for like,
Yeah.
wow, like win or lose. Life is about win or lose sometimes. So like even today I was like woke up and like so sore. My fucking body is sore as hell from like practicing jujitsu. And I'm like, I don't feel like talking, but I'm like, I'm gonna get up. It's just like really rolling over the soreness and like deciding to like just do it. Cause I mean, I knew I would feel great in the conversation, but just like allowing things to like I can acknowledge that I feel a certain way, still do what I like want to do. Like even if I don't have the energy in that moment, it's like, oh, you're still gonna do it though, and like pushing through and like knowing like when I can push through versus like when I actually need to rest. Because sometimes rest can be used as a form of abuse to our dreams. Like, like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to like, and I feel like a lot of my depression has come from like not fully going after a dream, even in the midst of a pandemic. Like, what does that look like? How do you go for a dream at home? Like studying and researching or just talking to people or chatting or like really meditating or journaling. Like sometimes like because I'm an active person. So I'm like, oh, I'm feeling this way because like I haven't been able to be as active as I would like, but like, how can I be active in this moment? And sometimes I feel like for me, I've been talking to my friend about like, the pandemic and like things like that. And I'm like, a lot of us are suffering from depression because we aren't pursuing our life's purpose in the way that we know we should be doing it. And like sometimes it's just taking one step forward, and like I'm not here to say what that looks like. It's like we know what it's supposed to look like, or we know what 100 is, like best effort, not like perfection, but best effort. And so I challenge myself, like, am I even about my best effort? Sometimes your best effort is literally reading a page out of a book. And like, that's cool. But like, once we really like honor our purpose, even though sometimes it's hard to accept, I know mine was, it still is. But just like being like the pandemic is a good way to reflect and like understand where our needs are. So yeah.
I love that. And Coriama, thank you. I always love your energy. Your energy is
likewise.
I love your energy. So thank you. I'm glad you woke up this morning and
I was like,
even though you didn't feel like it, you are here with us having this conversation. So thank you so much.
Yes, no problem. Thank you. I'm like sending love to Chicago. Like yes. I plan on being in Chicago in the next couple, maybe next month or May. I haven't really decided, but I'll be there soon because it's like so quick. It's like an hour and a half flight. I'm like, it is great. Yeah. It's so close. So I love the city. It's just better for me to visit. The energy had to change, so I had to move locations.
And I'm glad that you're enjoying yourself down there in Atlanta. I am, and you're
thank you.
To do great work. So I really admire that about you.
Yes, and if anyone has any questions, like you can visit my website, It's kokomeow.net, which is KOCO meow.net. And there's like just different information. You could send me an email if you have a suggestion, recommendation, if you just want to chat, or sorry, I'll be getting fucking messages from wannabe clients. I call them wannabes because you ain't in it yet. So yeah, but if you have any questions or want me to speak at an engagement or just like want to, ask me any questions, let me know. I'm starting to try to like get more of my experience in this work on Patreon. So, I can teach folks and also sustain myself. So that's coming soon. Folks been reaching out to me about it, like how to be a spiritually anchored, sex positive cultural worker or and anything in those, from dominatrix to anything like, so yeah.
So many opportunities out there, Coriama, for you, because you're just amazing, really.
Thank you. And thank you for holding space, like meeting you and like in the resilience, community. And like, I appreciate what y'all are doing and like, just keep pushing forward.
Yes, you too as well. Thank you, Coriama.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.